Starting 2018 on a high note. Kind of. From a Buick 8 is written by Stephen King and is about a strange interdimensional portal that takes the shape of a Buick. It tells the story of a squadron of officers and the strange experiences they've had with this car and the creatures that come from it. Immediately when I saw this book, I thought one thing. Christine. I thought this was just a Christine clone, a sentient car that kills people and can repair itself. But as I continued to read, I realized that I was wrong. Yes, both books have a similar premise, but then again, so do The Green Mile and Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption. Doesn't mean that they're exactly the same. In the beginning, you learn that a young boy named Ned loses his father Curtis, who happened to be a police officer. He discovers the Buick 8 in a shed, and is then told the story of how the officers found the car and the drama that ensued. Let me say, I like that Buick 8 is a laid-back story. There's a lot going on, but it never has that nail-biting tension or uneasiness that Misery or Gerald's game had. It also reminded me of The Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. I think that might just be the strange creatures that came from the car, but the sci-fi horror element is done really well here. When it comes to Stephen King books, there's certain things that you just expect. It's very well written, very witty, relatable characters, and in the case of this story, a strange, otherworldly being that keeps you questioning all the way to the end. So you're probably thinking, okay, slap it with an A+, let's get on with our lives. Well, not exactly. The biggest problem with the Buick 8, or from a Buick 8, pardon, is the framing. The story is told to you, but then they start telling a story within the story. It's a frame story, pretty much. Kind of. That's fine with me. However, there are several characters who chime in throughout. So if Sandy is telling Ned the story, it'll say Sandy at the top of the chapter. If Huddy is talking, it'll say Huddy. So not only is this book jumping from past to present, but each chapter changes depending on who's telling the story for that chapter. I like the idea of this, being that everyone can tell what they remember of certain situations. It's not logical that one person would know everything. It makes a lot more sense that certain people step in and say, okay, here's my view of it, here's what I think happened. However, it's very jarring. It pulled me out of the book quite a few times, and it even caused me to stop reading to try and get my bearings and figure out what's going on. It's a good idea in theory, but it's kind of messy, and it messes with the framework and makes things a little awkward to read. There's also a segment in the latter half about, the latter third, about what happened to the troop's dog, Mr. D. He's kind of like their mascot. There's an entire part where there's a chlorine leak, and then this neo-Nazi gets arrested for beating his girlfriend, and then he smears shit on the back window of the trooper car before smashing it out and escaping. I'm not going to go into detail about what happens to the troop's dog, Mr. D, because it's actually really emotional and I don't want to spoil it. But the segments leading up to it about the chlorine shit and the actual shit wasn't needed, and I think the story would have been better without it. If it wasn't for the ending, maybe I'd have more issues with the book in terms of the framing, but I loved the ending. If for anything, it shows that there's still hope. This book is depressing. This car results in the death of 3 officers and the disappearance of another, along with the disappearance of that shit-smearing neo-Nazi. So it wrapped up things nicely without socking you in the stomach. I wouldn't have minded a darker ending, but I liked this one all the same. I'm gonna go ahead and give From a Buick 8 a B+.